I've been walking along this this beach this morning. I love it. It's just space all around. It's a beautiful morning. It's just down Botany Bay, and I've been thinking about what came to me was just freedom, and the understanding for me is primarily freedom is an inner state. Freedom from being completely preoccupied with thoughts, feelings, usually repetitive, negative thoughts and feelings around the idea we have of ourselves. And I'm fortunate enough to be on a path where huge amounts of that have been eradicated. Not saying that I don't ever get angry or I don't ever feel fear or feel anything, but I'm not engrossed in that. I'm not overwhelmed by it. Thoughts and feelings, they come and go. I can experience emotions, but I'm not attached to them. And you know, recently with Mum's death, I feel grief episodes. Something comes, you know, memory, a thought, and I see a picture or a video, and I feel sadness and I feel that loss. So freedom isn't an absence of feeling or thought. It's about how much we're kind of attached and preoccupied with our story about suffering. Doesn't mean that we don't ever have any sadness or emotions, challenging emotions, anger, frustration. So that's like an inner freedom. And so actually advocating for, it's important to start from that place of realising inner freedom. But that doesn't mean to say that we put up with undue, disproportionate restrictions on our outer freedom, our social freedom. And as we're going through something of that now, in varying ways across the world, it's invoking anger and frustration for many people. And I appreciate, you know, the arguments. We're, you know, trying to preserve life, and so this is important. I understand the Human Rights Act. I'm by no means the most expert in it, but it's certainly something that I have to have a good understanding of in my profession, and it informs my, you know, how I work with people. The right to life is Article 2, and it's an absolute right, and I can see that, you know, the argument of limiting spread of coronavirus and and limiting death is therefore felt to be a just, proportionate response to limiting death from COVID-19. I don't know, there's so many different names now. SARS-CoV-2, you know, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about anyway. But yeah, the trouble is we have other rights as well, and so to purely and there's not been a balancing of the right to life for other people with other conditions who are dying as a result of some of these measures and restrictions, where services have been withdrawn, cancelled. And so it's all well and good saying, oh, it's about right to life so we can stop people dying from COVID-19, but the restrictions also produce an effect of causing death also. So, and as far as we can see, there's been no balancing of measuring the deaths from restrictions against the deaths from COVID. There's been a lot of focus on projections around COVID, but there's been not really any quantifying of deaths from suicide, from people who've had their cancer treatment stopped, withdrawal of services in the community, not being able to see your GP so easily as before. There is restricted access, and I'm hearing that all the time. So it's not as easy as just saying, oh, this is about right to life, done. Because what about the right to life for everybody else who isn't at risk of coronavirus? And there's also another thing, that is that there's the state can take into account resources, and so that's where the right to life is concerned. So they can't be held to account if there's an issue with resources for somebody's death. So it's a really important balancing act, really. And I guess what we're saying is that the balance, some of us are saying, is the balance is wrong, and the collateral harms and deaths are much greater, and over a long period of time also. There's all sorts of other information that you need to factor in terms of you know, what level of immunity is already present, and yeah, so much more information. But I really wanted to talk about, you know, the importance of freedom for health, and freedom is health. You know, it's not just a nicety. That's why when people go into prison, there can be a deterioration of mental health. It has an impact, quite a significant impact. And of course, we're still allowed out, but many people have been stopped from doing their jobs, which is vital for mental health, their livelihoods. You know, some people, this second lockdown is quite possibly means the end of their business, and these might be people that have just got their mental health back on track, and they're making something of themselves, a new business, and they're full of fear about how they're going to provide for their children. So the knock-on effects of all of this have not really been considered properly. It's again short-termism. The other rights that have been impacted on is the right to liberty, so freedom. You know, but that can be restricted for a number of different reasons. Crime, of course, and but if a person has the potential to spread an infectious disease. But again, that's a very nebulous thing. We're all told we all have the potential to spread infectious disease all the time, even outside of this COVID-19 period. So I guess that would have to be shown to be proportionate, that the restriction of rights is the right to liberty and people's freedom is proportionate. And in accordance with how dangerous and deadly that disease is, in terms of the infection fatality rate, which for this is 0.23%. That's on the World Health Organization. Is that enough? Is that enough to restrict people's freedom? Cancer. 1 in 2 people, I think, will get cancer in their lives. It's 50%. I don't know anyone that is seriously ill or has died from COVID, fortunately, and I'm not dismissing people that do have that experience. It's about proportionality is what I'm talking about. But cancer is the epidemic. So many people I know in my life have had cancer, have died from cancer, are being treated for cancer or investigation for cancer. I think it is estimated about 450 people a day die from cancer. Ongoing, not a short-term period of a virus that will eventually, and is already becoming less virulent, based on some of the scientific people that I've been listening to and reading. And the right to respect for private and family life. That's also a freedom, a social freedom that is being restricted and impacted. Denial of people's access to family members in care homes and in hospital, as happened with our mother. The right to comfort them when they're going through extreme mental distress because of a diagnosis. Can interfere with that right. The state can interfere with that right if it's demonstrated to be proportionate. I've not seen any of them assessments. I've not seen a balance of interests measuring the levels of distress caused by not seeing, the levels of deterioration in care homes and people that die early because they're deprived of that contact. You deprive a flower of sunlight, it dies. The studies in early childhood of maternal deprivation causes health problems. Neglect causes health problems. Brain damage, brain injury, developmental issues. So when people, see it in very simple terms, this is about right to life, there's so much more, it's so much more complex. And that complexity is not being engaged with by our government, by our chief scientific officers. And that's all we're asking. So don't, this is where my frustration comes. Don't belittle people that are thinking deeply and complexly like this, thinking that they're somehow naive for even suggesting, our rights are important. They're very important. And it takes a bit more than just following that narrative. It's to protect spread and people dying from coronavirus. There's so much more complex. How these rights impact on our health, how they are instrumental to health, and how to get the balance right you don't just use a blunt instrument as it's been described of lockdowns, because of the far-reaching health ramifications, the collateral deaths and harms. And there's a much growing research around this, and I'll post some links anyway with this video. But yeah, I hope that's kind of covered some things. I felt like I needed to speak out, because you can only say so much in a post, and you also don't get the heart communication, the expression, that you do in a video, and where somebody's motivations are and intent is, from written words, and that can get lost, and so I feel it's important to speak for that part of the deeper communication to not get lost. Morning. Hello.
No, I'll give you a kiss, I'm afraid. Come on.
No worries. Have a good day, mate. So, freedom. Freedom is health. Freedom for health.